High school reunion. My wife Kate and I are both in our early 40s, and I am a couple of years younger than she is. We went to the same high school, but she was one grade ahead of me. Although we knew each other in school, we didn't start dating until college. We ended up attending the same out-of-state university. Kate saw me during my freshman year on campus, and we ended up hanging out together. That led to us dating, ultimately getting married, and having 2 kids. Kate is the clingy type, which is fine with me. This means we spent all of our time together, which I didn't mind, as I was very much in love with my wife. We both work, but Kate was a SOM for 7 years until our kids entered school. She returned to work and has been at the same company for over a decade. Our problem really started in high school. Kate had a long-term relationship with a guy that we'll call Brad. During her senior year, they separated, and he went on to marry the girl he started seeing after her. Last year, my wife was sent an invitation to her 25th year high school reunion, and she was excited to go since our hometown is only a couple of hours away from where we live. I don't know why I agreed to it in the first place since I still stay in contact with many of my friends for school. There was no real reason for me to go other than a sense of duty as her husband. She knew I was reluctant and said it would mean a lot to her if I came. I wasn't excited to be stuck in a room full of people, most of whom I didn't know, listening to them talk about old times I had nothing to do with. I knew Kate in school since we shared a few elective classes together, but we had a different circle of friends. Kate was excitedly talking about all of her friends and what she had heard of them in the last couple of decades. As soon as we walked into the venue, she was swept away by a group of her old friends. I stayed close behind her, having more fun than I thought I would. Unfortunately, it wasn't long before she spotted someone she seemed eager to see. And that's when I saw her ex-boyfriend. He was still tall, athletic, and still had that smooth charm he had in high school. He was there with his wife, and they seemed like a happy couple. After some pleasantries, his wife excused herself to talk with another group of women. Kate had mentioned him a few times over the last 20 years in conversations around our time in school, and a few times, the comments were enough to pique my annoyance. I never talk about my ex-girlfriends out of respect for my wife. Watching how Kate's eyes lit up and the change in her demeanor when they embraced got to me. I'm not any more jealous than the next person, but this seemed a little out of place. They started talking immediately, catching up as if no time had passed. I stood there silent and felt awkward, holding my drink while they laughed and reminisced about old memories that had nothing to do with me. Minutes turned into an hour. We moved from the bar to a table, and Kate was deep in the conversation. I tried to join in at first, but they were basically lost in their world, talking about people and events I had no connection to. Eventually, I gave up and sat silently, sipping my drink and pretending I wasn't feeling like the invisible man sitting between them. Every now and then, she'd glance at me with an apologetic smile, but her attention was always drawn back to him. I was about to tell Kate it was time to mingle when his wife stopped by and took him by the arm. I felt a bit better because how he treated his wife made it clear to me that he was still very much in love with his spouse. I cut off their latest round of laughter, telling her it was time to go. She gave me that sheepish look she always used when she knew she'd crossed a line but didn't want to admit it. As we were walking away, she pulled my arm, making me turn to her, and she said she was sorry and didn't mean to ignore me. She claimed just to get caught up in the moment. I just set it aside and let her know that she might want to talk to some of her other friends because we had a long drive home and would need to leave soon. Kate spent the last couple of hours talking to her friends before we said our goodbyes and left. I was quiet during the car ride home, but Kate seemed to be caught up in her own little world because she just kept talking about her ex. Eventually, I interrupted her and said that I'd heard the conversation. That caused tension between us for the remainder of the ride home. She knew I was upset, but she didn't say anything until we were in the house. As we walked through the front door, she turned to me, and I could tell that she felt guilty for her behavior. Again, she told me she was really sorry for how the evening went down. After looking at me and not getting a response, she just said that there was nothing between them and I shouldn't let it bug me so much. She just again claimed to get caught up in the moment. Eventually, she apologized and said she didn't mean to ignore me. Her dismissive attitude made me mad, and I wanted to yell at her and tell her exactly how disrespected I felt. I didn't because there wasn't any real point in starting a fight. She said she was sorry, and I told myself that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was being the So I took a deep breath and told her it was fine and we should just forget about it. I could see the relief on her face, and she wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "Thank you. I know I messed up, but I promise it didn't mean anything." I just nodded, trying to push down the lingering resentment. She was my wife. People make mistakes. Here's where it starts going south. She kissed me, kind of slow and deliberate, pulling me toward the bedroom, saying she wanted to make it up to me. Against my better judgment, I let her. A while later, let's just say we were tangled together in bed. I let go of the anger and got lost in the moment. She kept kissing me and whispering apologies in my ear, and I let myself believe everything was okay. Then it happened. As she reached her climax, her breath hitched, and she cried out his name. It took me a second to register what she had just said, and when it hit, it felt like a knife plunging into my back. I just froze, and my body was going cold. She didn't even realize what she'd done at first, lost in whatever sexual afterglow she was in. I wasn't. What the F did you just say? I demanded and pushed her away from me. I could see her blink in confusion, and then her eyes widened in shock as the realization dawned on her. Oh my God, she whispered. No, James, I didn't mean. But it really didn't matter because the damage was done. I got out of bed, my heart pounding, angry, and in complete disbelief. I put on my clothes, my hands were shaking with rage. James, please, she begged, sitting in bed, the sheet clutched to her chest. It didn't mean anything. I was just caught up in the moment, I didn't even realize. I snapped at this point and screamed at her that you said his effing name. I'm pretty sure my neighbors could have heard me. I guess, in a way, we were lucky the kids were in their freshman and sophomore years of college and weren't home. Tears streamed down her face as she scrambled out of bed, still undressed, trying to grab and hold me. She was pleading, saying things like, please, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake, please don't leave. But I was already walking out of the room, fury driving me to get out of the house before I did something inexcusable. She kept screaming my name, running after me, her sobs making it hard to understand what she was saying. But to the best of my understanding, it was something like, don't do this. I love you. It didn't mean anything. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, her voice chasing me down the hallway. She was begging me to not go, saying she'd do anything. I opened the door, stepping out into the night air. She yelled my name one last time before I slammed the door behind me and kept walking. I checked into a hotel that night, my mind racing with everything that had happened. I couldn't stop hearing her voice in my head, couldn't stop replaying the moment she cried out his name in my bed. I stayed in that hotel for a few days, trying to understand everything. Honesty, I just couldn't make myself go out. I just needed time to be numb and process what this meant. Friends and family reached out, asking where I was, but I didn't tell anyone the full story. It was too humiliating. Like I was going to talk to everyone about my wife calling out someone else's name while we were intimate. Yeah, that's not a conversation I'm going to have with anyone but my lawyer. She called me dozens of times and left messages with apologies and pleas for forgiveness. But I couldn't bring myself to answer. Every time I heard her voice, all I could think about was the betrayal. Eventually, some friends tried to convince me to forgive her. They said it was just a slip of the tongue, that she was sorry and deserved another chance. This made the shame I was feeling worse because now my wife was telling people what happened. How could I ever look at her the same way again, knowing that even in our most intimate moments, she was thinking about him? How could I ever be intimate with her again, knowing she was fantasizing about her ex? How could I move on with the relationship after it dawned on me that I was her second choice, her backup plan? By the end of the week, it was pretty clear what to do. For me, there was no coming back from this. Even if I forgave her, how would I ever forget? The trust was gone, the betrayal was the only thing left. I ended up contacting a lawyer and had divorce papers drawn up over the next few weeks. It's stupid how long it takes to get this particular ball rolling. I knew divorce would hurt her, but I wasn't going to stay in a relationship where daily mental anguish was a reward for being a good husband. I had her served. She didn't try to hide, so at least that was a bonus. Our kids contacted me, and I was forced to discuss it candidly with them. My daughter took it the hardest, but in a way, she was the one who was furious. My son was shocked but said he understood my decision to leave his mom but told me he would rather I try to forgive her. Nobody was happy about what was happening, but the kids at least backed me. When I finally went back to the house to get the rest of my things, she was waiting for me. Her eyes and face seemed swollen and red. She looked moderately terrible. She started off by begging again. That was getting really old. I held out my hand to her and asked for the papers. Her hands trembled as she looked down at them, and then she collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. She kept up with the please, James. Don't do this. We can fix this. Please. I said I was sorry, but there was no fixing what she had done. This is strange because I was feeling an odd mixture of sadness and relief during this conversation. I finished the conversation with, "I won't do this anymore and I will not be your second choice." The divorce was messy, as it always is. Some of her friends and family sided with her, saying I was being too harsh and should have given her a chance to make things right. But I didn't care. There were motions to force marriage counseling, but I had the right to say no. This is a no-fault state, but our kids have been out of the house in college since we had them young. We both worked, so the courts decided there would be no spousal support on either side. We ended up selling our home and splitting the proceeds, but I got an extra $50,000 out of the split because my parents gave me the down payment when we originally purchased the house. The divorce was finally settled months later. It took almost 7 full months from when I started to the day it was finalized. I want to state that I don't hate my ex. I just don't want to be married to her because I would never be able to trust that she wanted me. I just can't see how I could ever trust her again. In a way, I think it was worse than finding out she was having an affair since she was actively fantasizing about the other guy while she was with me and then calling me by his name during the act. It makes me want to puke every time I remember that night. It's been a couple of years, and we do have family dinners during the holidays where we are all together. We don't talk about what happened, and we pretend we're happy. I've started seeing someone, so this coming year's holiday season is probably going to open some old wounds. Kate is still single, as far as I know. It sounds like Kate took it badly when my daughter let it slip that I was seeing someone. I don't know what to say about that since I have no plans on being single for the rest of my life just because it hurts my ex-wife's feelings. Some may think this was too much for a simple slip of the tongue, but for me, it was something I couldn't get past. Anyway, that's my story. I wish all of you well.
I only post new and unique content. Please like and subscribe.